Hi guys, welcome. My name is Venkatesh Gowda and I am studying computer science at Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering. So in today's video, we shall study about the principles of experimentation in design. So let's start the video. So now let's get into the introduction part. So what is experimental design? Experimental design, also referred as design of experiment, is a branch of applied statistics that deals with planning, conducting, analyzing, and deferring control test. It is performed to evaluate the factors that control the value of a parameter or group of parameters. It is a powerful data collection and analysis tool that can be utilized in various experiments. Experimental design is a method of planning an experiment to meet specified objectives. Planning an experiment properly is vital to guaranteeing that the right kind of data and an adequate sample size are accessible to respond to the research questions of interest as clearly and effectively as possible. Within pharmacology, the randomized controlled trial is still considered one of the best standard of study design because of its ability to neutralize the impact of confounding factors. So now let's study about the principles of the experimental design. So what is principle one? The randomization in experimental design. As the name itself suggests, the principle adopts a random approach to the assignment of treatments to experimental groups of people. It is viewed as the one of the most reliable mechanism, mostly due to its ability to generate an equal probability for every experimental group to receive any of the available treatments. This principle eliminates any variation or bias, thus making the experimental research a more authentic and a bona fide one. Also, what is experiment principle 2? The principle of replication. According to the replication principle, the experiment is repeated more than once. As the name implies, thus, every treatment is applied to many experimental units rather than one. By doing so, the accuracy of the experiments is increased. The whole experiment can even be repeated several times for a better outcome. It is introduced with the objective of increasing the precision of a study. In other words, the precision with which the main impact and interaction can be accessed. So at last, what is principle 3? The principle of local control is the principle 3 of the experimental design. So what is it? It has been seen that all extraneous sources of variation are not eliminated by randomization and replication. In other words, they are actually unfit to control the extraneous sources of variation. So in this picture, we can see the experimental design process. So there are total of nine design processes. First is that define the problem, then define the objectives. Third is that define the responses and factors. Fourth is the design the experiment. Then fifth is to conduct the experiment and collect the data. And next we analyze the data and print the result. At the eight, we predict the verified result and additionally, and at the last process, the additional experiments as required. Now we shall get to know about the applications of the experimental design. Experiments are an integral part of any research and development process. Without multiple experiments, you cannot demonstrate any specific theory. Sometimes you propose a scientific principle and then design the experiment to demonstrate it. On the other hand, sometimes you attempt to generalize experimental observations by developing a scientific principle. Either way, designing suitable experiments is a basic part of research that can't be avoided at any cost. Experimental design helps distinguish between the factors and variables that affect a process and those that don't. It is widely used in the fields of medicine, engineering, sciences, and etc. Other areas where experimental design is applied are surveys, opinion polls, and computer programming, etc. Now we shall get to know about some of the basic definitions that come under the principles of experimental design. So first is the experimental unit. For conducting an experiment, the experimental material is divided into smaller parts and each part is referred to as an experimental unit. The experimental unit is randomly assigned to treatment is the experimental unit. The phrase randomly assigned is very important in this definition. Next definition is the experiment. So what is an experiment? A way of getting an answer to a question which the experimenter wants to know. Third is the treatment. So what is a treatment? Different objects or procedures which are to be compared in an experiment are called as treatments. Next comes with the sampling unit. So what is a sampling unit? The object that is measured in an experiment is called the sampling unit. This may be different from the experimental unit. So next is the factor. So what is a factor? A factor is a variable defining a categorization. A factor can be fixed or random in nature. factor is termed as a fixed factor if all the levels of interest are included in the experiment. A factor is termed as a random factor if all the levels of interest are not included in the experiment and those that are can be considered to be randomly chosen from all the level of interest. So what is replication? It is a repetition of the experimental situation by replicating the experimental unit. Next is the experimental error. The unexplained random part of the variation in any experiment is termed as experimental error. An estimate of experimental error can be obtained by replication. So at last, it is the treatment design. So what is a treatment design? A treatment design is a manner in which the levels of treatments are arranged in an experiment. So I hope the video is informative. Thank you.